Did you hear her answer to that, by the way? That'd be very interesting, the molecular stuff, to be able to go into the atoms and the molecular structures and be able to utilize that.
That's probably too bright.
Let me just do this so we don't forget.
No.
Dim a little.
Yeah.
So
You can do that when you say temporary.
thank you to the students and the teachers who brought this to us. It's well over my head, but I can see where there are advantages to it, to be able to visualize something where normally it's just black and white ink inside a book on paper. So thank you very much. I'd actually probably like to see more at some point.
Yeah.
But thanks. Any other questions or comments? All right, and we're gonna move along. You guys are free to stay, or you can head on up. There's cookies at the top, so
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Guy.
Next up, we will start with committee reports, and we'll start with our reports from our student reps. Well, first question is, how did the soccer game in Weathersfield go?
We lost, but it was a good game. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming. Who's going to start?
So first up, tomorrow, Wednesday, October 16th, the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors at the high school will be taking the PSAT. And then for seniors who don't have to take the PSAT, there's optional post-secondary planning.
And then next week on October 21st, a college fair is going to be held with 110 representatives from 2-year, 4-year, and technical schools, along with military representatives. And the following day, on October 22nd, a Pulitzer-winning author, Jake Halpern, will speak to creative writing and business students.
On Friday, October 25th at 7 p.m., the music department's cabaret will be held, and that's the major fundraiser for the choral and the theater programs.
And then Spirit Week will also be held that week, October 28th to November 1st, and the annual Color Wars Hallway is happening, and the homecoming football game will be November 1st, and the homecoming dance is the 2nd. And the following week, NHS is organizing a fundraiser for the Friendship Center, and we'll be collecting hygiene products.
And then recently, 2 classes kind of combined in Miss Passay, which is creative writing class, and Mr. Boyle's theater classes. They work together on poetry performances. And then finally, the fall play, which is A Midsummer Night's Dream, will be held on November 8th and 9th.
That's it from us.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any questions on anything that the students have reported on? If you could just repeat the date of the college fair again?
October 21st.
Thank you.
Everybody's taking notes. Oh, okay.
Communications.
Committee reports? All right. Julia?
So for the communications committee, Brian and I had talked about putting this out to the Board of Education for upcoming column topics. So if there is anything you guys think that we should write about, now would be a really good time to share that with us. Brian and I last week went through the list that we originally drafted up. The only thing at this point that we are thinking of for like this week or next week is the biliteracy seal. That was something we originally talked about. Something else I was thinking, now that we have a new student rep, doing another one on our student board representatives. But I really want to throw this out to the board right now and just see what ideas you guys have, so we can start planning, because we've gone through all the topics that we've discussed.
So, Julia, thank you for the report on where we are. It sounds like you're looking to see if anybody has ideas that we would put into the column, things that are pertinent at this point. I think that's a great question. What I would ask at this point is if there are board members who have ideas or concepts that they think make sense to get into the paper, because this is a great avenue for us to continue to get our message out. is to use our email them to Julia, just copy Brian and myself so that we see what they are, and then we can
I
arrange
can
for
send out
them
an
from
email
there.
to everyone this evening.
So that would be great. So Julia, thank you. And again, I commend the Communications Committee on their diligence to keep our message out there.
And then the last thing, on behalf of the Communications Committee, this summer we did a lot of work for the CABE Award, and we received the email last week from Brian or Debbie that he had submitted all the items. So hopefully we will be up for the award, but we did spend a lot of time this summer going through that with Brian, so I'm really excited that our work has paid off.
It
Thank you,
was-
Brian, for all that.
You're welcome. There were 2 attachments to the weekly update that we received 2 awards at this point. There were 2 communications awards. One was for the weekly column, which we gave samples of the weekly column. The other was for the superintendent's update that comes out every other month with the hyperlinks and the videos attached and so on. So we know of that as not much. We did put in for the second level board leadership, exemplary board leadership award, and we'll know that within the next couple weeks.
So just to clarify, we are receiving 2 awards of recognition relative to communication,
Yep.
separate from
Yes,
the Board of Distinction Award that we have applied for.
that's correct.
Congratulations on both of those. Next up, we have correspondence to the board.
Yes, I have 3 correspondents to the board here. Dear Berlin Board of Education, there are really no words to express the heartfelt thanks and sympathy and support you have extended towards our family at this time of sadness, the George Sennett family. Next, we have a thank you note. Thank you so much for the beautiful flowers and truly appreciate your support and kindness during this challenging time. We also want to thank you for remembering John in a positive and loving light. All our love, Michelle, Rennie, and Anthony, John Kara's family. Thank you so much for the beautiful plant. It was so thoughtful and unexpected. I really appreciate it because even though he was my stepdad, I was still close to him. I love him dearly. Love Deb Peets. Hubbard.
Thank you, Brian. Next up, we have audience of citizens. Is there anybody who would like to address the Board of Education this evening? Okay, going once. We're not even going to go to 2 or 3. We're closed. Oh. was if it was okay to attend the PTO meetings. Now, the school board or the administration doesn't govern the PTOs, so that essentially is up to those PTOs to allow or disallow. And I think that, you know, there may be different choices made had it be those decisions being made today. But again, it's not the Board of Education that allows or disallows, it's the individual organizations, and what happens at them is kind of outside of our control, I think, as you know. But we also, as a nonpartisan board, believe to keep the politics out of the school system. You know, we absolutely argue for what we feel the school system needs, but it doesn't matter to any of us whether it's Republican, Democrat, Independent, in between. But I appreciate your comments, and I can see personally where that would be a turnoff to perhaps some of the attendees of the meeting. So. Tracy, you good? Or?
Yeah, as it isn't part of the board as a PTO president, it is a very difficult situation that we were put in. As a mayor, no matter who or what side it is, they have every right to come and speak about what's happening in a town or in our school district at any of our functions. So as the president, you always are welcome. Everybody's welcome to come. I do know that it weighed very heavy on all of our hearts as I spoke to the other presidents of the PTOs. I also spoke with Brian about it. It wasn't what we wanted, a debate that is not allowed in the schools. That's something that we kind of pride ourselves, like, you keep that aside. It was, unfortunately, it was a tough call, and it definitely wasn't made very easy. Being said, though, any mayor, no matter who it is, or our opinion of the mayor, they are welcome to come and talk. I do know the McGee meeting went very well. We don't have anybody come, so it was very small, but it was very, and I think Sal can even talk, it was definitely nice. There was no debating. I did make it very clear on both sides, this is not a debate. There is no time for back and forth. You can talk for a couple minutes about what's happening in our schools. And he talked about security and things, like you keep it school-wide, it's not about the town, it's not about a campaign, it's about our school. So our meeting went very well, but both sides knew the rules, so to say, and it didn't get out of hand. I wouldn't let it. But we do hear you, and we're sorry. It puts our volunteers in a tough spot, too.
Thank you. Tracy, thank you. Anybody else who'd like to address the Board of Education? Well, since Mike, you're the only person that's not part of the administration that I see here, I'm going to close that and move on. Next up, we have some personnel items that we need to address.
Yes, I have 3 letters of retirement here. The first being a letter from Janice Carpenter. She's a STEAM teacher at McGee. Letter of advance notice of retirement, Section 1 of the Berlin teacher contract of retiring from the Berlin Public Schools effective the end of the 1920 school year. For those of you who know Janice, she's been a science teacher at McGee. Very fortunate to have her in the Berlin Public Schools, just an exemplary teacher.
Before you move on, we have a motion.
Yep.
Move to accept the retirement of Janice Carpenter, teacher of STEAM at Catherine M. McGee School, effective June 30th, 2020. Also to thank her for the 14 years of service she has provided to the youth of Berlin, and to wish her good health and happiness in her retirement years.
Motion by Julia.
Second.
Second by Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
How many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 7.
6. 6, 0.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Oh, yeah.
6, 0. Okay. Apparently I need the virtual reality account.
Next we have Eileen Thurston, math department chair here at the high school, also a swim coach, very involved in the community, upbeat picnic. To know Eileen has immersed herself in the Berlin Public Schools and her family. She'll be a great loss to the district in many ways. Eileen states that she doesn't plan to be a stranger and would love to be involved in a lesser capacity moving forward. Berlin Public Schools will definitely miss Eileen Thurston.
Okay, we're slightly out of order here, but I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, hold on. I move to accept the retirement of Eileen Thurston, teacher of mathematics at Berlin High School, effective June 30th, 2020. Also to thank her for her 20 years of service she's provided to the youth of Berlin and to wish her good health and happiness in her retirement years.
Motion by Rich,
Second.
second by Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And
Last but not least, Susie McCabe, who's been a teacher at McGee Middle School. She's been a guidance counselor, a 6th grade ELA, a 6th grade social studies, 7th and 8th grade, English teacher at the middle school, has announced her retirement, and she claims she never wanted to retire. She needs to attend to her needs of her parents at this time, and that she's enjoyed her time in Berlin Public Schools. Susie's been a huge part of McGee for a number of years, and Berlin Public Schools will dearly miss her.
And a motion?
Move to accept the retirement of Suzanne McCabe, teacher of social studies at Catherine M. McGee School, effective June 30th, 2020. Also to thank her for the 26 years of service she has provided to the youth of Berlin, and to wish her good health and happiness in her retirement years.
Motion by Julia,
Second.
second by Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. If I did my math right, that is 60 years of teaching experience leaving Berlin High School, or Berlin Public Schools. And Sal, you got your work cut out for you. You've got 2 big positions to fill. So we wish those teachers well, and we will miss them.
Sal's going to D.C. We're going to learn about that in a minute.
Next up, we have the consent agenda. Would anybody like to add, remove, or discuss anything within the consent agenda at this time?
Just a quick discussion.
Sure.
Just to note the Washington DC trip, there's been a date change in the past. That Washington DC will now be going in June versus a typical April trip. Just to note that, the time change of when they plan to go. Some of that was a decrease in price of the trip, as well as the most appropriate time in the school year academically versus April versus a June trip.
Thank you, Brian. I'll accept the motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Tim,
Second.
second by Julia. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next on our agenda, we have new business, and we'll start with facility-related updates. Jeff, anything to report to us today? You've got a booming voice, just let her rip.
A couple of quick things on the facilities-related updates. Number one, I just want to report that the glass classroom at McGee is going along very well. We got a very nice report from Linda today at Cabinet on how nice it was looking and how it was coming along very well, and it's still on, my understanding is it's still on track to be done by the end of October. The second thing at McGee is the wellness room. Some of you may or may not know, we bought a lot of new equipment for the wellness room, and also we now have made an arrangement to have new flooring and pads put in, so that's going to be a tremendous thing. It's in the process right now. I'm very excited about that, important for the programs at McGee. The last thing is you may recall we've got a few security grants over the last couple of years. One of them, which is called the third round of a security grant, which we got between what the town put in, and between the state put in about $750,000. We, along with the town, have done a number of things under that grant. We've also spent a lot more money on some things than like we originally put in. We wanted 50 cameras, and we ended up doing a lot more cameras because a year and a half later, after making the grant, these are the kind of things that we were interested in. We did that because we had already spoke to the state to say that if we, as long as we stay within the realm of the grant and what our initial intent was, the quantities and which schools and so on and so forth, we can move those around, and they told us yes. So what we have done is we're taking a lot of credit for what we spent at the end of last fiscal year in cameras, and we're able to do some other things, use the grant for something else, and also the town is allowing some of the money that they had set aside for the grant to now be used for other things. Without going through the whole scenario, we've sent a formal letter now to the state saying this is how we want to move everything around. We've already spent some of the money. This is how to credit. I understand that's going very well. I hope to hear within the next couple of weeks whether that is accepted. My understanding in the conversations we had previously, it will be. The nicest thing I want to say here is that because of that coordination with the state and the town and, of course, the Board of Ed, we're going to be able to, I hope, get all the cameras put in at Griswold, which was not done at the end of this year. So that's the most important part of the speech. Other than that, the next things I have to do with capital plan, and that's farther down on the agenda.
Next up, we have a presentation on the official 2019-2020 district enrollment reports.
The district enrollment report overall, grades K through 12, we're at 2,735 students. It's a 1.6 decrease as compared to last year. That includes a decrease in, we had additional choice students that came in. We also did lose some choice students that were here in previous years. The expected in years past, we've had decreases that have been greater than that. I think it's also important to note here that the average elementary class size at Griswold School is 20, at Hubbard it's 19.36, and at Willard's 19.25. So our average class size is relatively similar at all schools. So we're maintaining an average class size of 20 at the elementary schools. Other than that, if you're looking back at the years prior, back in 2010, we were at 3,100 students. So if you're taking a look at those 10 years, as we said last year, roughly, it's roughly 400 students over 10 years. But last year we were relatively flat. We had a gain of 6 students, which really was the additional choice students that we received. So based on the Prada report, which is who we subscribe to, it looks as though we'll be leveling off over the next years, that we're maintaining right around 2,700 students at the district. If there's any questions?
Questions for Brian about enrollment? Brian, if I'm not, maybe I'm wrong, but the average class sizes for the elementary, while still at 20 or just under, are actually higher than what they've been. Usually we're somewhere around 18, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're a little bit higher, but we made some reductions in closed sections. We did have to add, at Hubbard, as I shared with you, last year, Hubbard needed another section. We would have had class sizes over 30 at the 4th grade level.
I just say that as just kind of keep conscious is that while overall enrollment has reduced, class sizes at the elementary level have continued to creep up a little bit, not substantially, but a little bit. So
And we still have had
to be conscious of that.
Yeah, we still have had a reduction of over 30 teachers over the last 6 years. So,
Any other questions for Brian?
let me just correct that. It was actually 5th grade where we split into 2. My correct was 5th. 5th grade would have had 29 in a class. We had to add additional teacher in Hubbard, 5th grade.
Brian, thank you. Next up is we have the approval of the district continuous improvement plan for 2019 and 2020.
So we asked Assistant Superintendent Dr. Erin McGurk, she'll share with you where we are for a district improvement plan at this time.
Yeah, that would be great. So good evening. I'm happy to be here to share an update on last year's plan and to present the 2019 to 20 plan. So both of these are in your agenda folder as links. Linda is passing out hard copies if it's hard to access those in Schoology. So the first thing I'd like to say is that last year, as you know, when I did the presentation, was the first year that we used this kind of format for formal district continuous improvement planning. And one of the things that we tried to build into it last year was the notion of goals setting around purpose, passion, and pride as overarching areas for the district, to be thinking about ways that we're creating opportunities for students related to the Berlin Learner Outcomes, to think about the strong learning culture that we wanted to develop here in the Berlin Public Schools, and to think about ways that we're enhancing community partnerships. After we presented the plan to you last year, the building principals in each one of our 5 buildings took the district plan and undertook their own school-based improvement planning process, which served the purpose of aligning efforts between the 5 individual schools and the overall district work. In January of last year, we had an opportunity to meet with a number of other districts that we've been collaborating through with the Connecticut Center for School Change. And in preparation for that, I asked the building principals about their response to the plan and the process in terms of how it had gone overall. And some of the things that they told us were things like, it helped them tremendously to feel like the work that was happening in their buildings was truly aligned to the work at the district and to create that through line throughout the organization. I also had people say things like they felt like they each had their piece of the pie. They didn't feel like they had to address every single strategy or every single action step, but that they had work to do in their buildings that was related to and supported this work overall. For you members of the board, you might remember that when I presented this last year, one of the things that I was told was that, or I was asked about, was whether it was overly ambitious for a one-year plan. And so you'll see that there are some things that are on the plan that are not done yet. And I think I told you that last year, that one of the things that we were trying to do was to create a plan that was ambitious enough to help us feel like we were really moving the district forward, knowing that some of the things would not be totally complete within one academic school year. So the first document that I have up is, you'll see on the left-hand side are the action strategies, action steps and strategies from last year's plan. And then I worked with the administrative team to give you an update on the progress that you'll see in the right-hand column. And I hope that what you'll see is that there was a lot of work done last year. I think that having the district plan helped us organize and focus our efforts in moving things forward. So you see, for example, on the first page, lots of work that was done in the area of social emotional learning, work that was done at McGee with Joanne Freiberg around restorative practices, work that was done through the Pupil Services Staff Department on the work of Ross Green, and a number of educators who participated in an online mindfulness course, which was a new opportunity for many of our teachers to participate in online learning activities. As you scroll through, as I scroll through, you'll see a number of other things that we looked at. We looked at master schedules and particularly at the use of time at the elementary level. Excuse me. The McGee master schedule was completely revised for this upcoming school year, or for this current school year. A number of district book clubs happened, both district-wide and some at individual schools and with individual departments. Our Teacher Leadership Council worked across the year. So you remember one of our September meetings, I reported out on the work that they did in August to run our new teacher orientation. Last year, across the entire year, they ran a series of sessions for teachers that are new to the Berlin Public Schools to welcome them and help them learn across the year and help them feel really connected to our staff. I'm not going to hit every one of these as you go through, but you can see work that was done around flexible seating, around Genius Hour, around the virtual reality that the high school teachers, high school staff just reported out to you. You see some work that's been done around outdoor learning spaces. So if you go to some of our buildings, you see refreshed courtyards and some outdoor spaces that have been updated as a result of these efforts. And as you continue to scroll through, you can see quite a lot of work This part highlights interdistrict collaboration. So we had a number of opportunities last year to work with educators from other districts, to send our teachers out to learn from others, and to invite people here to Berlin to learn with us. So that gives you an overview of some of the work that was done last year. I'm going to pull up this year's. One second. So we did work with the Administrative Council to start to think about the current school year's plan. And I would say that one of the pieces of feedback that I got was that because a number of the things that we set forth as work last year were either not yet completed or good progress had been made, but in some cases, the work that was done led to more steps in the same area. So it sort of started in one place or maybe with one team in a building, but now has spread so that there's more work that needs to be done in those areas. So you won't see like a crazy different focus of the district plan, and I really think that's as it should be. We shouldn't be putting educators across the district feeling like they're sort of ricocheting from one new initiative to the next new initiative to the next new initiative. We want to pick things that are important that we feel will build out over time. So one of the things that we made a commitment to this year was starting to look, for example, number 2, developing the district-wide strategy to support social and emotional learning. I reported to you at an earlier meeting at the retreat around some of the work that we're doing with Ruler moving forward, and we've made a district commitment to look at that as our K-12 overall umbrella, and I'm pleased to tell you that teams from Hubbard and from BHS will attend training in November of this year. So we are very fortunate to get them into that training. It's, as Mark Brackett has become more famous and that work has become more desirable, it's harder to get people in, so we were happy to get on board with that. You can see that some of the things that we're bringing in, things like the highlighting the work of the innovation design team, didn't exist last year. That was a new structure that Eileen put in place, and something that she's been working on with a team of teachers to think about innovative practices at the middle school, or excuse me, at the high school, such as the use of the VR lab, and also work, to be frank, getting people out of their own spaces and making use of all of the different things that are happening in across the building. So she's done a lot of work around getting people into the TV studio and making use of the equipment and resources that we have available to support learning. I'm going to highlight just a couple of other things. One is that in terms of creating additional opportunities for students to pursue personal learning goals, last year we had teachers who started to pilot things like Genius Hour projects at the elementary school. We've added onto that the development of internship and vocational job sites because we really want those beyond the school experiences to hit more and more of our kids. And the idea of having the internship coordinator position at the high school and thinking about the work that Linda and Cindy and the team are doing with our special education population to get people out into the community, into those job sites is really important work. I'd also like to highlight in learning partnerships the notion, last year we had really put a focus on partnering with other school districts, but we added language this year around partnering with higher education institutions. So for example, we've just initiated a partnership with Central Connecticut State University's Technology Department to help us expand the offerings and look at what we're doing in our technology ed department at the high school to think about revitalizing courses and to tap into the expertise that's right next door in terms of what the next level of work for us should be. And then finally, I want to highlight work that we've just kicked off last week with a group of teacher leaders. I put out a call for people to be part of a student-centered learning leadership team, and we had 10 teachers from the high school and 9 teachers from the middle school step forward to work with us. We'll be working with a coach from the Great Schools Partnership, who's coming down from Massachusetts to work with us. And I have to say, in my job, one of the best things that happens is when I do PD and the teachers end the session and they say, we want more, when are we doing this again? And they're really excited to come back and to continue the work. They were scheduled last week on October 9th, that they're scheduled again in November, and they asked if they could have additional time on the November professional learning days because they want to continue the conversations that they started about teaching and learning. So I think that's pretty awesome. So I'm going to wrap up there. I wanted you to have a chance to sort of see some of the highlights of this without going through every detail. But I'm happy to respond to any questions that you have or comments.
Aaron, if you could just speak to a little bit about, obviously the plan is very ambitious, there's a lot on the plan. If you could speak to a little bit about how it's not, like just with the ruler, how it's not going to be right with the students this year, and there's a plan for how we would.
Sure.
And a lot of these, the innovation team is not encompassing the entire high school, it's a subset. And a lot of these are subsets of staff.
Yeah, so one of the things that is part of driving the work of change in a larger organization is that it's hard to get everyone to change at exactly the same moment or to be ready to change at exactly the same moment. So in general, the approach that we've taken is to start with smaller groups of teachers that are particularly interested in an area of work, to get them up and running, to build their capacity and their skill set, and then just spread the work out from there. So one example would be with the innovation design team. Eileen worked with a small group of people. I think there are 12 or 13 teachers on the original group. They divided up some of the work that they were doing into subcommittees and then spread that work out, which involved more people. They took some of the conversations that they had in the small group and turned it around at faculty meetings to involve the larger groups, so that we're keeping everyone apprised of what's going on, but we're not expecting everyone to be moving forward at the same rate. What Brian's referring to in Ruler is that the part of the design of the Ruler model is to start by working with the adults in the organization before you start to spread the work to students. So the work that will be done this year is sort of three-leveled. One is that we'll have the team from Hubbard going at the elementary level. We'll have the high school team going. And tomorrow is also our inaugural Permission to Feel, Mark Brackett's new book, District Book Club. So we have about 35 people signed up to come to book club tomorrow, including Brian Benigni, who has not finished his reading yet. And so what we're doing there is, even for the schools where their teams have not yet been tapped to go to the district training or go to the training at Yale, they're having opportunities to learn through the district book club. At the high school, we were able to send a team of 5 people, but I think there are 10 people from the high school or 15 people that have signed up to be part of the book club. So we're trying to tap into that, that energy. And the same thing is true with our equity advocates team and our student-centered leadership team. We have different groups of teachers that are involved in that work. And actually, one of the things that I'm really pleased about this year is that some of those groups are tapping into teachers who have not been part of past change efforts. So, you're starting to see that broadening out and having more people find ways that they're contributing and being part of things. Have other questions?
Any other questions for Aaron?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Clearly, a lot of work went into 2018-19. As I look here, there's, I think, one category where we have a not yet, which means you've touched everything else on here, and we were concerned that it was overly ambitious. So congratulations to all of your staff, everybody who participated, to continue that work. And then we see that this year, you've incorporated those things that need to continue the work and now are challenging the staff more for us to continue to improve. So thank you for your efforts. Thank you to the administrators and your leadership side of it to keep your folks involved. So thank you very much. With that, are we ready to accept the 2019-2020 improvement plan? If so, we'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept the district continuous improvement plan for 2019-2020 as presented.
I have a motion by Rich.
Second.
Second by Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Good luck, guys. Can't wait till next year's report. Devin, you're leaving so soon? Next up, we have an update on the capital and budget, update on capital and budget.
President, I'm going to go up to the podium, but while I do, would you just pass those down, Zach, some of the stuff, and here, these two. And while I talk about the budget for a moment, this can go around, that's capital plan stuff. The first thing is the budget. As you all know, we're into the process of developing the budget for fiscal year 2021, which starts next July 1. The process usually is for us to start in the fall. The first thing we do is collect a lot of information from the department heads being not only the principals, but also the IT and security and pupil services, et cetera, to put together a budget from an operating standpoint that they can looking forward to for the next year. I will say that the cooperation from everybody has been great, as expected, and some of the stuff has already come in and to do with the capital plan, which I'll talk about in a moment, but we anticipate a number of other things coming in for review by the end of the month. The process goes, it comes in, we put it together in a reasonable form, and then the department heads meet with the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, go over what they want, discuss their programs, staff, budgets, et cetera, and then we start to formulate, a budget that we can propose, that the superintendent can propose to the board. That's already started. I know there's a lot of work being done at the schools at this point and the departments to get that work completed. So again, first of all, to you guys that are out there, it's great to have the assistance and help to put it together. So let me just say that by the end of November, we'd be looking at having a draft budget to start talking about. So we're looking forward to that. The second thing is capital plan. The stuff I just passed out to you has to do with what I'm going to say. The first thing is you have a handout that says Town of Berlin capital policy on it. This I just gave you for light reading when you're home, but I want to mention a couple things. There's a lot of new things going on with the capital policy and the capital plan for the town. It started last year and is in full swing this year. First of all, there's a new capital management committee, which is a number of people are on it to go over the capital plan and recommend things. This year they have asked the Director of Business Operations for the Board of Ed, which is me, to sit on the committee. So hopefully we'll have, and we've already started with the committee meetings, we'll know exactly and have good information on what is being approved, what isn't being approved, and we literally have a seat at the table now, which is, I think, a little bit better than what we used to have. And that was one that was offered and one that they are very much interested in having the Board of Ed at that table. So when everybody from the town, including the Board of Ed, proposes their capital plan issues, it'll come in front of the committee. There's people from, as it says in here, Public Works, Finance Director, Town Manager, obviously, and then they're going to work with Public Grounds, Public Highways, and everything else. So it's very good. We've had a couple meetings already, and it's very, very interesting. The second thing, and maybe more important at the moment, is if you turn to the second page of that, I've highlighted.
Just before you go on.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Kevin Delaney has requested or has invited a member of the Board of Education, a sitting board member, to attend this capital management committee. The biggest challenge for anybody sitting on this board is they hold them in the middle of the day. so it's difficult for us to get to them. But if there is anybody who feels that they can build that into their schedule, and I'll pass this along to the three who are absent. They're kind of all over the place, but if you're telling me you're interested, I'll pass your name to. I will pass your name to Kevin Delaney, and he would inform, he'll send out all the invitations. I think the bottom line is advocating for the capital dollars that we want to have in the school is really what it comes down to, is make sure that we're recognized. If you look at what Jeff's about to speak to, 2 of the last 4 years, we got 0 capital, 0. So sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to get that out before I forgot. So Jeff.
Yeah, I think all the invitees we can have are good. Actually, even for the presentations that are coming up this week for the Board of Ed, I mean, people could go to that. It doesn't have to be just me, obviously. I just happen to sit on a committee, but we can have other representation to present if necessary. So if you turn to the second page, the highlighting there, this is new. It's very, very important. You'll remember last year that in many, many years, any of you, I had the pleasure of being on the board for a few years, and we'd always put in money for capital and so on and so forth, and site and building, and a big wish list, and really never got a lot of money. It's not to say that the town didn't take care of us reasonably well, but as far as our list was concerned, we got nowhere near what we asked for a lot of reasons. Last year being maybe the worst, okay, for what the rationale was. But at any rate, they've now defined what they're going to put in the capital plan. Up until this year, and actually last year also, although it wasn't formal, they would accept a number of things under capital. And so we didn't have to put those things in our operating budget. We could apply for them in capital, and if they funded them, it was great. If they had money left over in capital for other years, they could pay for them. There was a number of things that were very, very flexible. Through a lot of discussions, I guess, with the Board of Finance and others, they have now decided to have the capital plan only consider projects that are $25,000 and above. Now, again, mostly capital plans are larger than that. But to us, it means that there's going to be a number of things that we would have normally asked for in capital plan that are going to have to be in our operating budget. So that's really what it says there. So you can assume this year in your operating budget, when you start to review that it's going to have a section for capital equipment and site and building, which it never did before, because there's a number of things we'd like to have done that are under $25,000. So we've got to add that to our operating budget, along with what's already planned for a lot of reasons, is a security budget and an IT budget. So it's going to have a little different look to it and probably a little different number. But that is anticipated all the way through, and I will tell you that all the other town departments are feeling the same manner, because a number of things that they had in capital are no longer going to be in capital, are going to be their operating budgets. So everybody understands we're going to have to be pushing very hard for operating budgets like we always do. So that's the reason that you have this, and the rest of it just explains what their policies are and what they're trying to do and how they're trying to do it. Very frankly, I'm excited. I think it's a good idea, at least to have the management committees. I think it's a good idea to put the focus on capital where it should be and put the focus on operating where it should be. Remains to be seen how well it'll go when it gets through the actual approval, not only at our board level, but also at the town level. The second thing is I passed out just a little information here on what has happened over the last few years. It doesn't take a lot of discussion, but it does let you know that the way the system was working, or at least was supposed to work, wasn't working for the Board of Ed. We requested a number of things that we had to under capital, large and small, because it wasn't included in our operating budget, and very frankly, you can see over the last few years, got very, very little of it, and sometimes nothing. So I like the idea of the change. We'll see what ends up happening when everybody focuses on the same thing. Again, it's not just a focus on the Board of Ed, it's a focus through all the departments. To give you a little idea of what we've done to date with the capital plan, we have submitted a number of things in the capital plan to be considered by the committee, and then, of course, by the town. We have a list, and this list came from the same way that our budget items came from. the principals and the department heads said, this is what we'd like in capital and equipment, this is what we'd like in site and building. My office put together those lists and then aggregated them the best we could to get a majority of them over $25,000 so they could be in the middle of the capital plan, and we were successful in doing that. However, there's a number of other things that you will be seeing in the operating budget. To give you a little idea, because I think it's good to know that you know what we're asking for, not piece by piece, but we have a lot of facility updates, lighting systems at McGee and at Hubbard, science labs, Berlin High School, television studio, McGee, flooring, carpeting, floor tiles at all the schools, millwork, the office configurations because of the vestibules, update renovations at the Media Center at Hubbard, upgrades in all the lavatories at the elementary schools. So a lot of things that we really need to have happen to us are on the capital plan. They are expensive, and we're hoping to get as many as we can. Under security, we did ask for the cameras at Griswold. Maybe that'll be done in another manner, like I mentioned earlier, but it has to be put on the capital plan anyways. There's some emergency notification systems and radio systems that our security department has asked for, which are big dollar numbers, and those are on, at least in the request for the capital plan. There's also transportation, two more school vans. The dollar amounts, just to let you know, between what our department heads asked for that could be in these categories and between what Doug Soluk, remember, he's our facilities director, so he always has an ongoing list of what needs to be happening in the facilities. Between the two of us, we asked for $1.7 million. That is about 11% of what was asked for by all the other departments. The entire list is $15.8 million. To give you an order of magnitude and something to compare to, exactly how much the town will approve in the capital plan remains to be seen, but I'm comfortable in saying that it's never been anywhere near $15.8 million. So there is going to be some cutting, there is going to be some scenario where it gets pushed out to other years, but we are in the game, and we're in the game very strong here with things that we are very happy to present to the town. Let's see, and I told you that we were 11% of what was asked for totally. So I think that's all of any importance I have to ask. I think the budget program this year is going to be good. We've got some new things. I hope that the capital is going to be very good. I know that there's a lot of people in the town that are pushing for more capital projects, including the Finance Board, which is a good thing. So if there aren't any other questions, that's what I have, Mr. President.
Any questions for Jeff? All right. Next up is we have policy review and revision. If you remember, we've done some work in our workshops talking about mission statements and purpose, and also our committees. In our agenda packets were those things that we discussed. In order to adopt these changes, we need to go through essentially the same process that we do with all policies, which is first reading, second reading. Tonight is first reading only. The first policy is relative to the BOE mission statement and the changes that we talked about there. And the second amendment, it's the bylaw 9001, which is the committees, and it just, that revolves around the renaming of the committees and what their roles will be. Second reading will take place at the November 25th board meeting, at which time there would be an expectation to take action on these. Any questions about the amendments and our first reading? Hearing none, we will move to venues for BOE meetings. Discussion. Mr. Benigni, you're on.
So I know that last year we looked to offer Board of Ed meetings in the schools in hopes of soliciting more attendance from the various schools and doing the student presentations. Well, not so sure that really took place. So in previous discussions with you, we talked about whether it's worth having the meetings in the buildings. And I just wanted to have a further discussion with the board for this year, whether we should be scheduling them in the buildings or we should have them at the Board of Education meeting room. And I don't know what you think is best.
So with that lead-in, it's open discussion, open forum, and we're interested in what the administrators have to say as well.
Mr. Urso, would you like to comment on that for us? Board meetings in your Board of Education meetings at McGee or at any of the schools versus at the Board of Ed?
They're fine, except the only thing I would say is that, like, the microphones sometimes hard to hear. As long as everybody speaks up on the mic, sometimes it's hard to hear, and it's easier at the board because it's smaller, but as far as having the meetings at the building, it's fine.
Dave?
I think that it was a great effort to try and increase attendance, but I said very respectfully, I think that was a misnomer. I don't know how anyone had this. I didn't see increase in attendance except for the families who wanted to be presented, but then they would just leave. You didn't until you have them right now. I think they still come, even if it was at a board ed. And I'll be frankly, it's a little extra stress on us trying to get really ready for the meeting at night. We have multiple resources away, getting the microphone set up, and the mic is great. That would be helping as a tech person, but that's outside of what we used to do. So I think we did it again. I think it was important. I understand the mission and the behind it, but I can't respect us that it needs more.
Al, let's see the hand.
Yeah, well, okay, because you mentioned start on I just think really, like, what's the criteria that the board sets for, why we're holding meetings in the buildings? And ask your question, was that criteria met? So if the thought was to have in the buildings may increase attendance, then you ask, where's attendance increased in those areas? If it's to see the buildings, and have a meeting at the building, is that the best way to do that? Can that then be met in another manner? It does take a lot of coordination, the building would be more than happy to do that, but I think it's really up to the board to look at the criteria that they set for why the needs are there, and then really ask, what is it accomplished through this act? And because we'll support that. I think that's the biggest question, what's the criteria and the purpose of these activities?
I think as Board of Education members, thank you for your feedback. I think it's important that we do get out and see the schools. I don't think we get to enough with our day-to-day work where we're able to. I know I try and attend as many early public school events as I'm able to, but I'm not always able to. I think, especially as we're advocating and pushing for more funds or resources, a stronger budget, knowing the needs of the schools by being in the schools really helps us articulate that to the community. For instance, I remember one year we had our Board of Ed meeting at McGee, or it was a town meeting, and then from there, Sal was then able to bring people into the boys' locker room, and then that was where the change happened. I remember that was a big deal that night. And I don't think as Board of Ed members, we are able to articulate the needs of the schools. Like, a budget might come forth from the principals and/or Brian, but we don't know it until we see it. And I think it's also, as a Board of Education, important that we're out in the schools, even if, whether the families come to the board building or to the schools, it's always a really cool experience to see the students up on the stage at their own school performing for us. That's my take. I've enjoyed going into the schools. I know it is a little bit more work, but maybe we could do it one school per year rather than twice a year per school.
We'll actually set up this year for once a year with the exception of VHS, or I think we have a couple of times.
Because we already
over
have
here.
a couple here.
So-
If I could, I think the assessment from the administrators is spot on. If the point was to get more people, mission was not accomplished. And if it was point to actually even see the schools, I don't know if that necessarily was accomplished either, because I guess from my view, it seemed, very disruptive to the schools. And in the end, it was really almost like a spot for a meeting. We didn't really have a chance to go out through the schools. We didn't see where the activities were taking place. We were kind of in a, whatever the convenient larger area was. So from my perspective, continuing doing that really doesn't serve a purpose. I think if there are maybe creative ways or different ways, certainly, maybe less frequently, but if it could be combined with actually seeing the venue where something is happening. Certainly we've had some wonderful demonstrations that were done at the schools. They could have been done at the BOE area too. But if there was something that was appropriate as seen by the administrators that, it would be great to see the digital literacy room and what we've done with it. It would be great to see some of the STEM classes. It would be great to see where they're using the virtual reality stuff. If appropriate, I think it would be great to actually schedule some kind of a tour prior to the board meeting where we can actually see that. If that doesn't work out, I don't think moving on as we have makes a lot of sense. That's my view.
I think I was one of the main proponents of going out into the buildings, and it was for a variety of reasons. One was to try to increase attendance. Another is to get out into the community. There's only 5 schools in this town. And I think if we're trying to build the community relationship, showing up in the neighborhood schools and being there in the middle of the neighborhoods, we could not have seen this at the Board of Ed. This was phenomenal. I would love to learn more about this program. Some of the things that we've seen it could have easily been transferred over to the Board of Ed room. You're absolutely right. In my opinion, I would like to see it stay one more year and maybe try to do it better than what we did it the first time. It would involve maybe even more hardships. I want to tour some of these buildings. I want to see the rooms that need to be repaired or that need upgrading. We keep hearing about certain rooms, that we talk about. I don't ever see them. And it's very difficult to get in because I'm working all day long, and by the time I'm out, it's nighttime and there's nobody at the buildings and I can't get into tour. And we are the mouths and the spokespeople for the budget for the town. I would be in favor of trying it this year and seeing if we can restructure it a little bit. I don't want to put too many hardships, but if each building, if we could tour one small area in each building while we're there, just to see a high needs area perhaps, so that we can speak for you to reposition some of the resources.
Or a high success area.
Yes.
But to Rich's point, I think that could also help with our communication and our column in The Citizen, because that's going to give us more stuff to write about, something really successful at one of the elementary schools or middle school or high school that we as a Board of Ed saw, not coming from one of the principals.
So if I'm hearing it correctly, then we will continue, we'll put one meeting except for the high school, one meeting at each of the schools moving forward, and there will be a tour a half hour before the board meeting. Does that seem reasonable?
I think that would be fantastic.
And then we'll reevaluate at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking at the schedule for the next 9 months that we've got here, 3 of the 8 meetings are already identified as being here at the high school. Sorry, Eileen, you're not getting 1, you're getting 3. And the December meeting, which is, the December meeting, which has the high school madrigals presentation, almost seems like this might be an ideal venue for them to perform in, because it's acoustically their space. Sorry, Eileen, you might get another one.
That might be it.
We actually have a conflict that night because we have a choir rehearsal also going on.
Eileen and I just talked about today about the conflict there with the madrigals that evening. So.
The intent was to increase community participation, try to get better attendance, and also for the opportunity for the Board of Education to see the buildings. And I think that, to Jake's point, that both of those initiatives failed. So if we schedule meetings at the schools with the criteria that we're using today, the outcome will be no different. So I think that we need to look at how we make it different. And frankly, we would appreciate, you're on the outside looking in, right? All the work is for you. What would you recommend to us that would help us succeed in what we, was a purpose to why we were doing this. And I think that everybody was like, yeah, that's a great idea. We get to showcase it, and you guys will see it, and we're going to get all these parents to come. And it didn't work out that way. So we have to do something different, otherwise you get the same result, right? There's some saying that goes along with that, but I can't think of it right now, so.
I noticed that we need to schedule a construct with the board workshops. So looking at not additionally, creative work into a workshop night for a couple of the schools. And this way, you might offset, for lack of a better term, what has to be done during the day to hold a meeting in just a certain spot of the school. I can see maybe the VR presentation does make total sense. I wouldn't want the board to miss that opportunity because it's limited by the board. But a lot of our presentations aren't space specific, so to speak, especially at the elementary level with what we have. But you did work into your schedule some of these workshop nights, maybe even around budget time. You might be able to schedule, hey, we're going to do a tour 2 or 3 of the schools. We block a couple of hours and we do a tour of one, drive a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit, but I'm just saying it might be an opportunity to maximize that time depending on what we have on those nights.
We're doing one of the workshops at the schools, as he's talking about, we move the workshop areas to the school, we can tour and then do a workshop.
We're a small town, so 5-minute drive either way, it doesn't kill us. I think that's actually a pretty good suggestion. I mean, I think working into the workshops, getting out of the schools, we certainly can do that. That's a very interesting suggestion.
It also makes sense for us that the conclusion of each of those meetings or visits is that we
Realistically analyze, was that successful or not successful? And if it's not successful, change it. And not do it at the next meeting. It's just for the sake of, oh, we have to do it. Now, obviously, we're all busy. But if we're going to make this effort, then we need to make sure we make the effort. I mean, and I don't know what else we do to let parents and the community know where we are and when we're meeting. I mean, it's in the newspaper every week and it's posted. I don't know what else to do. But with that. Go ahead.
No, it was a good idea.
No, it's a good idea.
I don't want to speak for 5 minutes, but just.
Well, I mean, I think even the workshop is well flexible.
There's only 4 right now, man. She's got to go through whatever you guys.
I'm just curious, to the elementary ones especially, or also South, do you just push out the fact that the Board of Ed meeting is at your school on a given night? Are there parent notices that go home or something?
Yes,
Okay. No, it's something electronically that goes out that says, hey, there's a Board of Ed meeting tonight, come.
The truth is, no matter how wonderful we make these, I think the truth is that after the presentation goes, no matter how great it is, most of the people are going to leave when we get down to business. I think I think we learned that.
Unless we change the way we do things.
And better cookies.
I mean, Mike looks captivated. So
You don't get the cookies until the end? Is that
Keep the cookies till the end and come up with better flavors.
I think also just because we missed the mark doesn't mean we throw in the towel quite yet. Like, I think this is an opportunity for us to say, okay, we didn't achieve what we wanted this time. Let's try again.
Mm-hmm. I think that's essentially what we're saying, so.
So let's continue the year, and we'll talk about doing either a tour night where we tour multiple schools, or putting a tour before the workshop, and then doing the workshop at that school, so we don't have to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
Can we get a
make
bus?
Yeah.
sense? Probably get the LP van if you want. I can do the LP van.
We could carpool.
All right, everyone drinking?
Okay. Thank you for your input. I mean,
Thank you.
we want to make sure that you understand we recognize some of your concerns, and we want to make sure that we're working together. But we still have this goal of trying to get more people involved with this. So,
Don't get wrong, some live stream
Okay, one person watching 177 times.
How many do you have right now? 3. We picked at 7.
Anything else on this topic? All right, then with that said,
Move to adjourn?
motion by Julia. Second by Tracy, all in favor?